It's the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by longtime baseball coach, athletic director, and Chicago Cubs scout, Bob Lofrano. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast in the South Gym on the campus of Los Angeles Pierce College here in Woodland Hills. I'm Phil George, and our guest today, he has 35 years of baseball coaching experience, the former baseball coach and athletic director here at Pierce College, and a World Series champion with the 2016 Chicago Cubs, Bob Lofrano.
Hey, Phil. Nice to be here. Nice to be in the Pierce Gym where I spent many a days, many a hours, especially as the athletic director. And welcome to Pierce.
Happy to be here, and especially happy to be here with you. This is actually a really special show for me personally. I got my start in media as a reporter for the student newspaper here at Pierce, and I spent quite a bit of time, not nearly as much as you, in this gym, and a lot of time in your office, talking sports, talking baseball, and really looking forward to sharing some of those stories today with the Cannon Sports family.
Sure, that's 15 years ago that you were here as a I think a punk reporter, you could call him.
Is that what we're calling it?
I'm not sure. You were younger then.
I think the term is Cub reporter.
A Cub reporter, that's right. Like the Chicago Cubs.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well, before we get into everything, you want to introduce yourself and give everybody a background on your coaching and administrative career?
Sure. Call me coach. That's what I did. That's what I loved. What a great job that is. I recommend that to anybody who has the opportunity to get into coaching. I started coaching in 1975 at Chatsworth High School, the school I played at. And I was very fortunate to be able to be the varsity coach at that time. And then in 77, the coach that I played for went on a sabbatical in 75. I took over. He came back in 76. I helped him. He left in 77. I was the head coach. And then I got, at the time, the schools were moving teachers around depending on their nationality. Not nationality, but, you know, if you were the minority, you came to the Valley, and non-minority went other ways, and I went other ways to Crenshaw High. And so I coached the JV team at Crenshaw High for 2 years. A young Daryl Strawberry was he was a 10th grader on my JV baseball team. He was pretty good even then. And then he got moved up to varsity. And then in 1980, he was the #1 pick of the country out of Crenshaw High. So that's an interesting name to keep in mind, you know, that I've been able to coach. And then I was moved back to Chatsworth the entire 80s. And we had a really nice run there where we won the city championship in 83. And we won the West Valley title every year. And then at the end of the 89 season... 9 straight league titles at Chatsworth. Yeah, that's pretty good. I enjoyed that. We had some great players. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. That's why you can be successful. And then I came here at Pierce, and I had played at Pierce in 68, 69. And so Pierce meant a lot to me, you know, as an ex-player. And they have the opportunity to come back, but they never offered me a teaching position until the summer of 89. I was asked before to come and coach, but when I would ask, what am I teaching? They said, no, just coach baseball. I go, no. I got to make my house payments. I need a teaching position. So I came here in the summer of 89 and stayed here and coached until 2007. Had nice success here. Again, really good ball players. And we'll probably talk about some of them pretty soon. And then I was the AD for 10 years. And during all that time, this is my 41st year of scouting for the Chicago Cubs.
And we're going to get into all of that. Most recently, you were honored as an inductee into the California Community College Baseball Coaches Association Hall of Fame. That induction ceremony is going to be coming up here in a couple of weeks. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you. It's a really nice personal honor for me, and I think it's a really nice honor for the school, because it'll always say my name with Pierce College right alongside it. So again, thank you to the players. Thank you to the coaches who coached for me, who normally were my ex-players. And that was a good run, and it's nice to be honored for that.
This region of Southern California has such a rich tradition in the game of baseball. We've had a few guests on the show speak to that. You've had the experience of actually having a front row seat to it, both as a player and as a coach. Before we get into your contributions to that history, speak to just the just rich tradition of baseball in Southern California.
Well, it's a hotbed for one thing, and you can go right to Harvard-Westlake, who has 3 starting pitchers in the big leagues, all-stars. And that's been going on for quite a while. I mean, here I mentioned Darryl Strawberry, back how many years ago as a #1 pick. And it just goes without saying the city section is usually won by a Valley team, although that has changed a little in the past. The Orange County schools are a hotbed for high school. And of course, with the great colleges that are here, UCLA, SC, I mean, right here at Pierce, Santa Barbara's 70 miles that way, UCLA, SC right over the hill. It's pretty good. And how many championships has Cal State Fullerton won? Long Beach has won. So it is a hotbed for baseball.
And with your induction, that cements your place as having a permanent place in that history. So up against the backdrop of everything that you just described, what does that honor mean to you? And especially to have your name permanently attached to Pierce as a result of that.
Oh, it means a lot. I mean, I spent my whole, other than the couple of years at Crenshaw, I spent my whole baseball career west of Winnetka Boulevard, which to me was nice. I mean, it's a great area, the Chatsworth area. And I played there. I played at Chatsworth High. So that meant a lot to me to go back to my high school and to coach and to be successful and win a city championship and then come to Pierce where I played before and, contribute to the success we had here at Pierce for those 18 to 20 years that I coached. And then to be honored for that is, it really, really wraps it up for me.
We had Eric Sondheimer on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke to some of the memories that he remembers from being up close and personal watching baseball during that time. Brett Saberhagen throwing a no-hitter when he was still in school. What are some of the more memorable players and moments that you remember from your time coaching, aside from Strawberry, of course?
Right. Well, you mentioned Brett Saberhagen, and I can tell you a story to me that turned around the whole program at Chatsworth. In 1981, we're playing Cleveland High School, and Saberhagen's up. He doubles the right center, triples down the right field line, and I tell my pitcher, Glenn Braybrooks, hey, you got to get him off the plate. He's leaning out over the plate, and he's taking the ball the other way. So Glenn made sure he got off the plate because that's the kind of pitcher he was. Now, Braybrooks isn't a big name, but he was for us because I think that showed at that moment, this is how you play the game. You play to win. You do it legally and everything like that. And from that point on, we were pretty unstoppable for the next 8 years. And when Saberhagen threw that no-hitter against Palisades in the finals, Palisades had just beaten us in the semifinals. So I was well aware of Brett. He's become a good friend. He was a great player. So he was really a standout for the West Valley League among the many who've played there. I remember Garrett Anderson playing at Kennedy. Derek Wallace was a pitcher I had who played in the big leagues, and he no-hit Kennedy that had Gino Tagliaferri and Garrett Anderson on it. There's just a lot to know. How about Robin Yount from Taft when I was helping coach at Chatsworth, Robin Yount was playing.
I actually didn't know he was a Taft guy.
Taft High School Hall of Famer. Again, you would just have to do so much research to see the great history. Just in the West Valley.
And then you come over to Pierce, had great success here, 7 conference titles, and went to the 1992 Final Four. I believe it's the only time that this program has been to the Final Four. So you've got that distinction, 6 Coach of the Year awards, and you coached a few major league guys here, correct?
Correct. Probably number 1 on that list would be Barry Zito.
At one time, the highest paid pitcher in baseball.
He said he used to get booed when he went into restaurants because when he took that contract on and didn't do well at the beginning of that with the Giants, it didn't go over too well. But he had a great career. He won a Cy Young Award. He was a 3-time All-Star. He won 2 World Series rings. And I remind people that if it wasn't for Barry, they wouldn't have won one of those World Series because he shuts out the Cardinals when they had to win a game. He shut out or pitched really well against Detroit in the World Series. So to have him come into our program in 1998 was really an honor to have him in our program. And then the next year, Coco Crisp came and played. and he had a stellar career in the big leagues. At one time, we had 6 players at the big league at the same time. And to me, that really, hey, we're just a community college in Woodland Hills. We're not UCLA or SC, but we had 6 guys. Those 2 plus Jack Castle, who's the older brother of the quarterback, Matt Castle.
Yeah, he used to play for the Patriots.
Exactly.
Jack, I think, pitched for the Padres.
Yes, he did, and a couple other teams. And then Doug Slayton, who pitched with the Diamondbacks. Brian Corey, who was a shortstop here, who we made into a pitcher, was with the Red Sox when they won the World Series. And there's one other guy that I'm not thinking of. But again, 6 guys in one time in the big leagues. That's pretty sweet. Oh, Kurt Perkins from El Camino High. That was the 6th guy.
So you've been at several different levels, the high school level, the junior college level, and obviously experience in the major leagues as a scout. Now, we've seen examples of coaches who move up from one level to another and maybe don't have that kind of success. They're not able to replicate it. That's been different for you. What is the thing that ties them all together, and why have you been able to have that amount of success at each level you've been at?
My love of baseball. I mean, when I write up a practice, I just put myself into the mode of what do we need to prepare for that might happen against us. It might not happen in tomorrow's game. It might happen 3 weeks from now. But we're going to continue to practice first and third defense. We're going to continue to practice bunt defense, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I was just talking to our trainer's son. He's coaching now at a high school in Grossmont High in San Diego. And that's sort of the advice I gave him. You know baseball, just write it down and prepare for it. Because you don't want to be left holding the bag if something happens and you go, oh man, I forgot to talk about that. We forgot to practice that. You got to prepare, be organized. And I think I always was. The players came in, knew exactly what they had to do that day. It was posted. That's how you do it. That's how I did it. And it was successful.
And then getting into your transition to becoming the athletic director over here. Obviously, you're a baseball guy through and through. That's your number one. That's your background. But this program under your oversight had plenty of success in sports that were not baseball. 3 bowl wins for the football program, 3 state championships for volleyball, 19 total conference championships. How were you able to find that much success in these other sports that maybe weren't your background? How much of a team effort was it on staff?
Bottom line was I coached. I knew what they needed, what the coaches needed. I just put myself in their shoes. Like, this is what they're going to need to be successful. Was it more meal money? Was it a better transportation to a game? And just made myself visible to the athletes. But I always wanted to take care of the coaches first, because they're the link to the athletes, not me. You know, they're the link that I have to go through to get to the athletes. So I always made sure the coaches had what they needed for them to be successful, and that would trickle down to their players. So that was a good run for 10 years. It was, you listed a lot of nice accomplishments, and the coaches are to be, rewarded for that. They did a great job.
And so many of those needs are universal, regardless of sport. Can you talk about some of those specific things that you sought to improve while you were here?
Well, the playing facilities, for one thing. I mean, we're sitting in the gym. The gym looks nice, but it's not an outdoor facility. You got to go on the baseball field, the softball field, the tennis courts. They get hammered by the weather, et cetera, et cetera. So having nice facilities, and here's an example. The baseball team in 2020, before the pandemic, played 20 games all on the road. So that's just 2 years ago, because their field was unsafe. How do you make the baseball field unsafe? This year, they played almost 40 games all on the road because the baseball field is not safe to play on. They can practice on it because they know where the gopher holes are, and they're not going to go run in that area. I mean, I think that's atrocious. So that leads, I think, to a bad season. It's hard to recruit, to bring kids in. Your field's not play, and this is a gold mine field. This is really a field where the Dodgers could come play. You got plenty of foul territory. I can't tell you how many Sunday nights I spent picking weeds off the infield grass. You know, that's what you do as a baseball coach. And Billy Pickett's our coach now. He's the same way. But it was out of his control how the field got so unsafe. It's really a shame.
Do you find, which dynamic do you find to be more common? The attitude that you brought to this program, or what you're describing now?
I would hope that my attitude carries on. And I mean, I hired Billy. You know, I knew Billy because he coached at College of the Canyons against us.
Not necessarily here. I mean, right. I mean junior colleges nationwide.
Yeah, you got to. It's, you know, the first thing that always gets talked about being canceled is athletics when there's a budget crunch. So you got to fight that.
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, Stanford, and we're talking, we're not talking junior college, we're talking Pac-12, major national name. They cut like half their athletic department.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they get it back. And they haven't cut it here, although there have been a couple of teams that folded because of lack of players. So we'll see how that goes. But it's a tough level, and it's all up to the individual administrations to really back athletics. They can say they back it, but now let's see them back it.
Yeah. What would backing it look like?
Well, it would be to make sure that we went through times where we didn't have meal monies for the athletes. And I would say, well, wait, we're playing at Cuesta. Cuesta is a 3-hour bus ride, and I'm not going to give them meal money. What if that was your son? You know, he has to buy his own meals and stuff. That's just for lunch. How about dinner on the way home? So that's where you need to show us you really are behind us, is meal money.
We've talked about how important it is for these programs to receive support from the administration and from coaches and from athletic directors like yourself. What we haven't talked about is the actual athletes themselves. Now, junior college is obviously a 2-year program as opposed to the 4-year universities. And we hear how, you know, with advents like the transfer portal, it's becoming increasingly difficult for those programs to build a consistent culture of winning when you have players cycling out so often. Here, it's not because of the transfer portal, but what are the challenges in building that culture when you do have players cycling through here every 2 years?
It's not easy. And let me tell you, baseball, I can remember Mike Gillespie, who passed away maybe a year ago, the SC coach, and he needed a shortstop badly. And we had really a good shortstop, Blake Sharp from, I think, Moore Park High. But you know what? Mike went about it the right way. He contacted me. I said, yeah, you know, I hate my players leaving a year early. I mean, it's a 2-year program. I'm a college just like you are. But being a good friend of Mike's and the way he went about it, and Blake ended up going to SC after one really good year here. So you don't want to stand in the kid's way. There's nothing that makes him have to stay. But I also remind the 4-year colleges, because I had a battle with one of them back on the East Coast once. You're taking my shortstop away. Now, what am I supposed to do? You know, he's supposed to be here for 2 years. You know, but that's just the way it is. But most of the guys around here, the 4-year colleges are good about it. And it's up to the student. You know, can he academically transfer? Is he ready to play at that level and actually get playing time? And then go to those classes. So it's a battle. You're going to lose guys, but that gives another kid an opportunity also to play.
Yeah, and junior college has really become, and it always has been, but even more so recently, it's become a much more viable option and a much more recognized as a viable option for player development. What do you think has led to that rise?
The opportunity to participate. You know, UCLA SC is going to recruit a pitcher from high school, maybe throwing 88, 89. He's going to throw harder as he gets older and stronger. And our guys are throwing 84, 85. So he's not going to get recruited. If he goes to UCLA because mom and dad went to UCLA, okay, I get it, but you're not going to develop. You're not going to get the 50 innings you need to pitch. You're not going to get the 85 to 100 at-bats. So those are recruiting things you can talk about. I used to recruit the kid who couldn't go to UCLA first, because those are the guys you really want, because the other kid who could go to UCLA has to work through that all summer. Is he going to go to UCLA? And then in August he goes, oh, I'm not going to go to UCLA. Hey, coach, can I come to Pierce? But I wanted to take care of the guys I knew who couldn't get in academically. So there's little things like that. But my big recruiting that I would talk about was, I'm sitting on this side of the table. I'm talking to you and your parents, trying to recruit you. I went to Pierce. I started here. I then went to Cal State Northridge. Now I'm sitting on this side of the desk as the head baseball coach trying to recruit you. So that's what the JC can do for you.
I think the recruiting element is a thing that not a lot of people pay attention to. We usually think of recruiting in terms of big time 4-year college programs.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Saban walking into a room and laying out his rings on the table in front of a 5-star recruit. But it really is a necessity for every program, big or small, 2-year or 4-year. Can you talk about the recruiting process as a whole at the JUCO level?
Well, you kind of hopefully recruit in your area, although a kid from El Camino could go to Glendale, no problem. But you try to stick around your area and stay. Well, the boundaries are, there actually are recruiting boundaries. We're area code 818. Any other area code that hits 818, you can recruit. 805, 213. If you go beyond that, then you're not breaking the rules, but there are rules you have to abide by. So you just kind of take care of yourself. You know, if you got 2 shortstops, why are you bringing in another one? Because he's going to know he's not going to be able to play because you got your returning shortstop coming back. So he may come for a visit, and you have nothing to offer them. You have absolutely nothing. All you do is you're saying, well, we play the same schedule that College of the Canyons plays. We're in the same conference. You're just going to have to make your decision where you want to go. So it's hard. They can say they're coming here today and tomorrow they're going to go to College of the Canyons. That's just the nature of the game.
Well, and another important thing that you touched on is playing time, and I think that's an important distinction to make between the junior college route and 4-year universities. If you're a freshman at a 4-year university, regardless of what sport, we're talking baseball, obviously, but no matter what sport, you're behind sophomores and juniors and seniors. Yep. If you're a freshman here, you're behind sophomores, and that's it.
And odds are you're probably going to be playing one way or the other. And again, if you're a freshman going to the 4-year school, you hopefully are a top 10 draft pick, top 10 round draft pick, and you didn't sign because that gives you a chance to play, you know, that kind of stuff. So it used to be, well, the rule is still the same. If you get drafted and you don't sign, you come to the junior college. If you go to UCLA, you have to wait 3 years. So that kind of plays
specifically in baseball.
Specifically in baseball. So that comes into it. We can talk about Zito. That's how he happened to be here, end up here. But yeah, recruiting at this level is a different ball game. It really is.
Another question is that of exposure. Obviously, Pierce College and most JUCO programs aren't big national brands. So one concern for an athlete who's considering going that route is, will I get enough attention? Will I get enough exposure that scouts and recruiters will see me and that I can go to that next level?
If you're good, you'll be known, period. I mean, the scouts will find you. And if the scouts find you, the UCLA coach and SC coach will find you. So it just all depends on how good you are.
We just talked a little bit about Barry Zito. That was pretty much the next item I had here. So a little bit about his route. He was drafted in the 59th round out of high school in 1996. Does that round still exist anymore?
I don't think so.
I don't think
it
does.
Sure. I don't think it does.
Yeah, he and Piazza, I believe, were drafted in rounds that aren't even around anymore. Did decide to go to Pierce. Later ended up at USC, ended up being the 9th overall pick in the draft, turned that into a 15-year major league career. So if you're advising a player who is choosing between those different routes, who is the junior college route for? At what point would you say, yes, this is right for you?
Well, again, it's all about your development as a ball player. So you have to decide. Barry lived in San Diego and went to UC Santa Barbara as a freshman. Then he actually got to pitch in the Cape. So he was above the rest. But now his dad knew, and there it goes back to that rule, you can't get drafted in a 4-year school until your 21st birthday or your junior class, has done. So now the wheels are spinning. Okay, if I go back to Santa Barbara, I can't get drafted. If I go back for my junior year, I can't get drafted. I want to get this thing going. I need to drop down to a junior college. And therefore, through connections, we got hooked up. He dropped down. Rest is history. He was drafted in the 59th round out of Pierce. He was drafted in the 3rd round by Texas. He turned that down to go to SC, became an All-American, the 9th guy picked by the Oakland A's. I think it was the 9th guy in the first round. He did it the right way and then had a great career.
And how would that outlook and advice translate to other sports? Because even though probably the most prominent professional athletes that have come out of here have been on the baseball side, but you've definitely put more than just baseball players in the pros. There's
been some football players. Well, Eric Kramer, quarterback for the Bears, my beloved Bears, and other NFL teams, and he quarterbacked here at Pierce. There was a guy from Crespi named Babe Loftenberg who had a little NFL experience. There was a wide receiver for Coach Martinez, Jamil Strong, who was a 3rd-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens. So that's within the last 8 to 9 years. Not a lot, but there have been. Basketball, I'm not sure if there's been an NBA player out of Pierce. I'd have to really think about that if there's been an NBA player who went to Pierce.
Yeah, so it's clear that route can certainly bear fruit in terms of professional success, and that the caliber of play really can be elite at this level.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. JC baseball, JC basketball, JC football. You know who went to Canyons was the defensive lineman. He's got like Paul Pierre something.
Oh, JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul.
Yeah, he went to College of the Canyons. Huh. So, I mean, if you really looked into it, there are JC guys throughout the NFL.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be shocked if they looked that up. I was even surprised when I was looking up. I have a couple of names of baseball players who spent time in junior college. Bryce Harper, I knew that one. That's obviously Nevada. A story of he did that in lieu of his senior year of high school. True. But also Albert Pujols.
13th round pick of the Cardinals out of Missouri. It's a good point. I mean, I think he grew up in Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the Dominican.
A Dominican. And then he came over to the States and went to a junior college, and some scout saw some potential in him.
You saw him play back in those days, didn't you?
I did at the area code games, which is the summer high school showcase. And now there's many showcases, but back then it was really the only one.
And it's not just players, too. There have been several prominent, even legendary head coaches who have gotten their start at the JUCO level. Two in particular that I want to talk about and that I know you know well, Denny Crum and Marv Dunphy.
Coach Crum, when I was a student here, was the head basketball coach. Denny played at San Fernando High School, came to Pierce to play basketball, went to UCLA to play basketball, came back to Pierce to be the head coach. Then became Coach Wooden's first right-hand man assistant before he took the job at Louisville. When we did our first Hall of Fame, he was the first guy I called Louisville. I go, Denny, we're going to do or I call him Coach Crum. We're going to do a Hall of Fame. If you can make it, I can't pay for your flight, but if you can make it, this will be big. He goes, I wouldn't miss it. And he was spectacular that night when he gave his acceptance speech. And Marv Dunphy came to Pierce out of Taft High in the mid-'60s, like 66. And I'm not even sure he played volleyball. I'm not even sure we had men's volleyball then. But he got introduced to volleyball. And that was really a first for him. And he's won at least 2, if not 3, Olympic gold medals as head coach. A storied career at Pepperdine. Is probably one of the finest, if not the finest, volleyball coach in the country.
And pretty much every big name in beach volleyball coaching right now played for him at Pepperdine.
Yeah, his coaching tree is quite impressive, to say the least. And what he would say, the most influential person in his life for coaching is Ken Stanley. And we are sitting on Ken Stanley Court.
Yes, we are.
At Pierce College. And it's nice when you can say that about somebody who means so much to you. When we did the Ken Stanley Court night, when we introduced it and everything, I had Marv Dunphy with the microphone in his hand as master of ceremonies for Ken. So it was really special. Yeah, he's a good guy, and he's a Brahma.
Going back to Denny Crum a little bit, you mentioned he rose to prominence coaching at Louisville, 30 years as the head coach there. He's 6th all-time in Final Four appearances.
Not bad.
As a coach, and got his start here. Like you said, Hall of Fame inductee here. You established the Hall of Fame at Pierce College. How important is it to preserve all of that history and let people know of the legendary talent, both on the playing and coaching side, that have come from here?
It's probably the most important thing. I mean, if your son wants to go to a junior college and you can look up on their website and go, oh my gosh, look at this. Barry Zito pitched here, Denny Crum coached here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it goes without saying. And again, they were 4 events that, I know the last one was probably 265 people showed up. We always had them at Woodland Hills Country Club. And they were the best things that ever happened on campus. I'll make that statement, that they were the best thing that happened on campus for 4. We did it in 10, 12, 14, and 16. And when I did it in 10, I had over 60 years of people to look at and say, who should be in the Hall of Fame? You know, and I always wanted to honor coaches, but I knew the history of Pierce because I played here. I knew what this place was because I grew up in the area. So it was real easy for me to pick class by class by class of Hall of Famers just from my knowledge of what went on here.
Did you ever catch any heat from anybody? Did you ever get called from somebody who you didn't include in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I did. I had a volleyball woman walk in, and I didn't know her, but she said she played, and I got it. You know, I could understand that, and I was the committee. One-man committee. I was the one-man committee. But I would go to coaches and say, hey, I need, what do you got from the swim program? And Fred Shaw would give me some names. And so we really tried to spread it around. But yeah, there were a couple of times people would come in and say, I played at Pierce, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, let's see. But if I had stayed and we would done it, and we would have done it every other year and maybe even to this year, then you're putting in 10 to 15 more each year. So hopefully it'll come back. I wouldn't hold my breath, but hopefully it'll come back.
All right. You are now retired, as you like to remind me when we talk on the phone.
That's true. That's all right. I'll give you time. That's okay.
But let's get into, I guess we could call it your side gig.
That's right. My side gig for 41 years.
That's right. So in 1981, you were coaching at Chatsworth High.
Yes, I was.
The Cubs had just been sold to the Tribune Company, who implemented a new marketing slogan, and that was starting a new tradition.
Yes, they were owned by the Wrigley family. We all knew Wrigley Chewing Gum, and Wrigley owned Catalina Island, where the Cubs used to train. But they sold it to the Chicago Tribune.
And from that slogan, you got an idea.
I got an idea. I go, you know what? I'm a diehard Cub fan, born in Chicago. Ernie Banks was my favorite player. I'm a baseball coach. I'm going to write him a letter. So I wrote him a letter explaining all that. What can I do to help? I would like to help out. Is there anything I can do to help? And usually that letter gets deposited in the trash can. But all of a sudden, I got a phone call from Doug Mapson. Doug lived in Palmdale. He was a high school coach who just became a full-time scout in the area, amateur scout. And that's it. That started the story, and I'm still there. I'm still scouting for him.
So break down how scouting works within an organization, both with regard to the organizational hierarchy and also the geographic breakdown.
That's a good point. And there's 2 departments. One is amateur and one is professional. I'm in the professional scouting. And the amateur means that I don't go to Chatsworth, I don't go to Pierce, I don't go to UCLA to watch games. I mean, if they called me and said it, I would do it, but that's not my assignment. My assignment are the Dodgers, the Angels, the Cal League, because it's close by.
Minor League Baseball, California League.
Exactly, California League, or I've been all over the country. I'd say to people, I don't go to Rome, Italy, I go to Rome, Georgia. And I've been to Rome, Georgia 3 times, because that's a Braves team. So you become the eyes of the front office. The front office isn't sitting behind home plate at Rancho Cucamonga. I am. And so I write up a report, and if I say acquire this player, or if my verbiage matches the grade I gave him, that alerts the front office that I think this guy is pretty good and we should try to make a trade to get him.
And so you're specifically scouting minor league players, or I guess also major league players, right, but professional players that the organization is looking to trade for, not guys that you're looking to draft.
No, because they belong to another organization. Now, they could get cut, and all of a sudden, are they free? Are they out there? Did they just get designated for assignment? And you go, whoa, we got some good reports on this guy. So it works both ways. In fact, in the Rule 5 draft, where in 1954, Roberto Clemente, the great Roberto Clemente, was a Rule 5 draft. He was a Dodger. Hate to say that, you Dodger fans, but he was a Dodger who was Rule 5 drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. So here's an example. In December...
Well, and even beyond that, who was the general manager of the Pirates who plucked him out of the Dodger system?
Was it Branch Rickey?
It was Branch Rickey.
So he had a background.
A little inside baseball knowledge there.
Exactly. So this is a real, people won't even know this guy. They may know the guy's name. He pitched at the Masters College. His name is Connor Menez, M-E-N-E-Z. And I saw him pitch at Richmond, Virginia in 2019. And I was like, this guy's really good, left-hander. And I didn't know him at the Masters. We always played the Masters in the fall. Pierce versus the Masters was fall ball. And so I called up his coach and got some really good things on his makeup. The makeup is really good, important. You know, you don't want Milton Bradley too many times on your team. Sorry, Milton. And so they had the Rule 5 draft in December. It wasn't the big league draft where he had to stay on the big league roster. It was a minor league one. And we picked him based on basically my report. Well, you know what? He just got called up to the Cubs 2 days ago because he was in AAA. So little things like that. I don't know if he'll pitch in the big leagues. He's on the team right now. But it makes you feel good, like, hey, they're reading my report.
Yeah. So how does that feel for you when you write a report and it hits?
It hits.
You have a guy that you said had talent, and they perform.
Yeah. When we had the big sell-off last year with Baez being traded and Rizzo being traded, two of the guys that I had written up really good became Cubs. A kid named Palencia from the A's in the Chafin deal, the left-handed reliever. And in the Chris Bryant trade, an outfielder named Canario just got moved up to Double-A yesterday. And I wrote up a really good report on him. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get him, but all of a sudden, whoa, he was part of the Chris Bryant trade that came our way from the Giants.
Now, obviously, those trades happened in July around the trade deadline. So exactly. How far in advance of that were you down at the minor league affiliates looking at those guys?
It started already. I've already done the Dodgers. I already did Visalia, and I'm currently doing Stockton of the Cal League.
So you have no idea what the Cubs have in the pipeline this year as far as trades. You're just going around looking at anybody and everybody just in case.
Just in case. File those reports before the trade deadline. Trade deadline is usually July 31st. So you try to get all your reports in by then, and so they can compile them and do that. The best thing is when somebody from the front office calls you and says, hey, you know, we acquired this guy because we read your report. You know, and I'm not the only report. Trust me, there are more than one report on guys. And then the research and development team get involved, and they can do all the video and this and that and all that stuff. So it's pretty comprehensive.
One of those players that you did scouting for on a trade was Anthony Rizzo. And that trade was rather consequential. Key member of the 2016 Cubs that won the World Series. You brought something to show and tell to the Cannon Sports family here. You want to show that to that camera right there?
Well, but first let me talk about Anthony Rizzo. I saw him at AAA Tucson, the Padres AAA team. And the one thing I remember was talking to the people, the workers in the stands about what kind of guy Rizzo is. Just glowing reports, how he worked with kids and things like that, which he was noted for in Chicago. So again, I was one of the reports that said, hey, we ought to require this guy. And by doing that, we got this nice World Series ring, 2016, with the Cubs logo, with my name on the side, which is really special for me.
Beautiful.
It is. And there's inside the ring, it talks about the 3 series that we won against San Francisco, LA, and Cleveland. It gives the date and the exact time when Rizzo caught the last out from Chris Bryant, the 5-3 ground ball with Mike Montgomery on the mound from Hart High School, things like that. So it's memorable, you know, and it's really special, period. Very special.
And I'm sure that title meant so much to you on multiple different levels. I mean, number one, you grew up in Chicago as a fan, 108-year drought. So many Cubs fans lived and died without ever seeing their team win. You not only got to see the team that you grew up rooting for win a championship after that long, but take an active role in making it happen. I mean, like you said, you went and scouted Anthony Rizzo, told the Cubs to acquire him. Not only did they, not only was he a key piece on that team, he was the one who caught the final out.
Yeah, it all kind of came together there, didn't it, on that ground ball to third. Yeah, it's so special. You pinch yourself, that I was part of that. I can remember in 2007, the Cubs were really good. And I think we won 97 games and we were the best team in the National League. And I got to advance the Dodgers. Well, advancing means for 2 weeks, I was watching every Dodger game in Pittsburgh, in San Francisco at Dodger Stadium. How did I leave school? I won't even answer that. But I advanced the Dodgers, And so what did I have to do when the season was over? I'm in San Francisco. I look at the scoreboard and I go, okay, we're playing the Dodgers. You had to wait till that last game. So that meant on Tuesday, I had to be at Wrigley Field to give my report to Lou Piniella and a room full of executives, me and 2 other guys, because we were a 3-man crew. And so I taught my golf class here at Pierce, took a flight to Chicago Monday night, did the Wrigley Field advancing. Tuesday flew home. Wednesday taught my golf class. I walked out of Wrigley Field that day just pinching myself. I go, you got to be kidding me. What did I just do? I just gave an advanced report on the Dodgers, who were going to play, to Piniella, his staff, and the executive of the Cubs. So there have been moments like that it's like, this is pretty good, just because I wrote a letter. But the bottom line is, you stick around because you write good reports. I mean, this is pro baseball. You write reports that are good, and therefore they keep bringing you back. Walt Alston had all those 1-year contracts with the Dodgers as manager. I've had 41 1-year contracts with the Cubs.
Wow.
Simple as that.
Let's talk about that report. What does it look like? What's on it? What are you looking at when you're writing it?
That's where I think, just because I've coached baseball, I kind of have a different look at it from people. I can't tell you how many times I converted a catcher to a pitcher because I thought the catcher had good arm strength and he couldn't hit. So you would go to the kid and say, if you really want to play, let's try to get you on the mound. And if that doesn't work, let's make you a submarine pitcher. I did that, I can't tell you how many times. And it worked. It worked in instances. So again, Kenley Jansen is a great example, as a guy I saw catching at the Inland Empire 66ers at the time, 66ers, at the time was the Dodgers single-A team in the Cal League.
That was actually my first job in baseball.
I remember you told me that, and it's like, okay, this guy's batting 8th. Well, you don't find too many big leaguers who batted 8th in the minors. I'm just saying, there could be, but probably not. But I do remember watching him play in the World Baseball Classic, where he's throwing out guys from his knees. He doesn't even get up. He just drops his knees like Benito Santiago and fire to second. So I'm watching him and I go, this guy's got great arm strength. He's 6'5". He's a switch hitter who can't hit. I wrote in my report, his best way to get to the big leagues is to be a pitcher. And later that year, which I think was 2012, the Dodgers did make him a pitcher late in that season at Inland Empire. Then he goes to Instructional League as a pitcher, and the rest is history.
Yeah, became the all-time saves leader for the team.
Yep, made a lot of money. But those are fun things to do. And I think I've told you about my report on Clayton Kershaw.
Well, before we get into that, first let's get into the 2 to 8 scale. 2
to 8 scale. Both of you and I are 2s.
What does that mean, though?
It means there's no hope. It's called an NP, non-prospect. So, and that's what you give guys. And I hate to give that out because somebody spent money to sign that guy. Some scout, some organization thought this guy could be a big leaguer. That's why you draft him. But you make that decision because you're watching him, and you put an NP on him, non-prospect. So that's 2. 5 is average big league. If you put a 5 on a guy, you're saying that he could probably hit 250 in the big leagues. He's probably throwing 93, 94 miles an hour. So he's an average player.
Who in today's game would be a 5?
Who in this game would be a 5? Let's use the Dodgers, who have so many good players on it. It would be a 5 would be a player who's not a regular. Who's that infielder they just got?
Hanser Alberto?
Yeah, he would be a 5. No skill really stands out, but enough skill stands out to put him in the big leagues.
Yeah, role player, does his job, right-handed bat off the bench, can spot start a few games around the infield, but not going to make an all-star team.
Exactly. Most likely will get the bat when a left-hander's on the mound. And we also now refer to that as a C1, like Jock Peterson, to me, is a C1 because left-handers eat him up, but right-handers he really dominates. But he's a platoon player because of that. So a 5, you can find your 5s. Now you go 6, 7, 8. and now you're dealing with the all-stars, the MVP guys who get votes and again, you can go through, just name your best players on each. Freddie Freeman is probably easily a 6 and probably a 7.
A 6?
Yeah. There's got to be a flaw there somewhere.
What's Freddie's flaw? I don't even know.
I know.
I can't even imagine what it would be.
He's a Gold Glover. He probably doesn't have top foot speed. I mean, you're looking for that 5 tool, and tool speed is one of the tools, but he's such a great player, such a great guy too to have. There aren't too many 8s, but 6s and 7s. I really think one of the best players in baseball is Trey Turner. I mean, he's a National League batting title last year. He had 28 home runs and stole 32 bases. I mean, like, what more do you want from a player? I think he's
the most underrated player in baseball.
And he plays shortstop, a premium position. I mean, I know Trout gets and rightfully so, but this guy's playing shortstop, and that's a premium position to do all that offensively. Yeah, especially power at that position. Yeah. And he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. What is he going to get? Oh, my God. He's going to deserve it, though. He's a good player. Now, I know the answer to this, but in your career, how many 8s have you ever given out on a scouting report? The only 8 I ever gave up was to a young left-handed pitcher pitching for the Great Lake Loons of the Midwest League, the Dodger single-A team in the Midwest League, and his name was Clayton Kershaw. And when you go to the minor league games, you're normally sitting with the next day's starter or the guy who's going to start 2 days or 3 days from now because they're charting the pitches. So you get to talk to him. You might say, hey, Clayton, what was that pitch that guy just threw? Because you're not kind of sure what that was. And he'll go, oh, yeah, he's throwing a split finger fastball, not a changeup. So you get to know him. And the next day, hey, Clayton, how are you? Hey, Bob, whatever. And so now he's pitching. And it's like he's in the 8th inning. He's throwing 96 with the big curveball. I'm going, man, this guy's really good. But I also knew he was a first-round pick. I mean, I'm not picking this guy out of a haystack and say, oh, my God, I found this guy. He's a first-round pick. But because I talked to him, and because I watched him in the dugout, encouraging his teammates, just being totally involved in the game, the 7 I was going to give him, I made him an 8 because of his makeup, because makeup is so important. And when I gave that report and turned it in, we would have organization meetings in November to kind of wrap it up. And I mean, organization meeting is everybody. Everybody's in we're in Mesa and the whole thing. And I remember Jim Henry, who's currently with the Yankees now, is our general manager. And he picks me out of this, there might have been 200 people. Hey, Bob, you gave this guy an 8. What do you think is going to be in the Hall of Fame? And you better believe I said, yes, I do, because that was my report. If you're going to put that down, you got to stand by it. You got to have some conviction of the heart. And so when Clayton first came up, it was like, come on, Clayton, just keep throwing shutouts, keep doing what you're doing, And I think he will be in a Hall of Fame. So and again, he was a first-round pick. So I'm not saying that I discovered him. But that's the only 8 I've ever given. Were the Cubs trying to get him? It all depends on where that draft was. I'd have to look back, but back then the Cubs probably passed him and didn't draft him. I hate to say that, but that's... But you were looking at him when he was already in the minors. Was he a guy that you were possibly looking to trade for? Oh, every day you put down, every time I wrote a report on him, and I just did again, you put acquire. But that means you have to trade, and are the Dodgers going to trade him? That kind of stuff. Right now, you put acquire? Oh yeah, I did, because I did the Dodgers their opening series, Cincinnati and Atlanta. So I was at Dodger Stadium, and I wrote my reports on them. I think you're going to have a hard time getting Friedman to bite on that one. And the other thing is, Clayton's on a 1-year contract. He could be a free agent at the end of the year, but he's a Dodger. He probably should stay a Dodger. So going back to your report on him, the thing that really stuck out about me is you were going to give him a 7. Mm-hmm. And what put it over the edge was how he was really paying attention, being a student of the game. Correct. How much does that mean to a scout or to a coach? Well, let me tell you, from the scouting standpoint, from the Cubs standpoint, it's huge. I mean, we're supposed to dig in, even going to Rancho Cucamonga or Lancaster, we're supposed to ask the video guy I'm sitting next to for that team, hey, what kind of guy is this? Or go to the announcing booth. Do you know anything about this guy? Especially if you're really on him and really want to put a good report in. Because again, I've seen guys that, they're throwing their helmets, they take the bat to the water cooler when they strike out in a minor league game. And it's like, from a coaching standpoint, I don't even want to be around that guy. So you kind of ding them on the makeup. So that's part of your grade. Do you think most players understand that when the scouts are there, they're looking at literally everything on and off the field? I would hope so. I mean, they should be, and they know we're there because we're right behind home plate, especially in minor league games. and with the radar guns and everything. So again, we are, in our scouting report for the Cubs, it's a major part of it, big time.
Before we wrap up, the one last thing that I want to talk about is kind of the changing landscape of the scouting profession, especially with the proliferation of analytics. Now, the Cubs are obviously a very analytically inclined organization. Theo Epstein was running baseball operations for a while. Joe Madden was basically the godfather of analytics from an on-field managing standpoint. What's your opinion on the way that analytics has had an influence over the modern game of baseball?
I was just watching Kyle Hendricks pitch. He just shut out the Padres 2 nights ago. And his changeup, I have the ability, because of the programs in my computer, to watch him throw every pitch, but I just went to his strikeouts. And what I noticed was I thought his arm angle was really good on his changeup. You know, he was up high, he wasn't low. And so I can look analytically at him throw that changeup, and it says arm angle 53 degrees. Okay, that's a good pitch. All of a sudden, the next arm angle is like 49. Whoops, Kyle, get that arm back up. You know, that's how analytics can help a pitcher or help anybody. The spin rates on it, the whole thing's on it, you know, exit velocity on a hit, all that. But, you know, I just went in there and I wasn't writing a report on Kyle. I just wanted to see how he threw a shutout for 8 2/3 innings. But I was looking at his arm angle, and they gave me the percentage of his arm angle. And when it started to drop and the ball gets flat, gets hit, he stays on top, things are good. So that's how analytics can help.
Yeah, and I think from a fan perspective, there's a lot of limited understanding of what analytics is and what analytics is not. You see, if you spend any time on Major League Baseball social media, you would think that analytics is taking a pitcher out because his pitch count reached 65 pitches.
Can't go the third time through the lineup routine, you know.
But it really goes so far beyond that. Aside from the things that you just described, what are some of the ways that analytics helps a team win a game in terms of an in-game managerial standpoint?
Well, of course, you have, you know, the spray chart. Where's everybody hitting the ball? So, you know, you can put your players in the right spot. I mean, that's actually a form of analytics that you could do at Pierce, because you play each team so many times, you know that this guy hits the ball that way. You know, it's hard to say specifically in that. I mean, I would teach a class here, just guest speak a class, and I'd bring them stuff like Bellinger's strikeout percentage, which is way too high. I mean, an average big league strikeout percentage for a hitter is maybe 24% at the time he strikes out, and he's in the 34 to 35 range. So maybe that's the guy you go, hey, let's go right after him. We have a good shot of striking him out because look at his strikeout percentage, you know, or a guy who walks a lot has a high walk percentage. So things like that you can look at in the dugout and maybe help you win a ball game. The interesting thing, though, on the minor leagues, like going to Rancho Cucamonga, they are playing with the new rules. You have to throw a pitch in 14 seconds with nobody on base. You can't put 3 guys on one side of the infield. It's got to be 2 guys on each side of the bag. These are things that could come into the major leagues next year. So they're in the minor leagues being done now. There is the automatic strike zone in AAA now, and I think maybe even AA. So things are changing.
And your thoughts on those?
I like that. I don't like the shift. I mean, it's obviously when a left-hand hitter comes up, one guy's out in short right field. And why don't you hit the ball to the left field? Now, let's just keep it 2 guys each side of the bag. Maybe you pull over a little, and you have to be on the dirt. Can't be on the grass. That'll add more excitement to the game. You'll get more base hits and stuff. I'm not so sure I like deadening the ball, which I think they're saying they've done this year. Guys aren't hitting home runs where they think they've hit it well.
I don't know what they've done, but whatever they're going to do, I wish they would just keep it for a couple of years rather than overcorrect. Because next year they're going to change it and home runs are going to be back up like 600%.
Yeah, because people are going to go, man, I thought these guys were hitting home runs, and players are going, I thought I hit that well and it didn't go. It's interesting. And the balls are even in the minor league levels. I think the first part, there's 3 different types of balls that are going to be used in each third of the season. One is a different type of mud. One is some type of gloss they put on the ball. And there's another thing. So again, everything is changing at the minor league level to make it look, well, how's it going to be at the big league level? Last year, in fact, that's what Theo's doing right now. He went to the commissioner's office to try to make baseball speed up its game. You know what one thing they did last year in an independent league? they moved the mound back 60 feet 6 inches to 61 feet 6 inches to try to get the ball in play more. You know, it's not going to be that hard of pitch. They're trying. We'll see what happens.
You ever seen the movie Moneyball?
Oh, yeah.
So what I want to know from a scouting perspective, as we're talking about analytics and kind of the new age of baseball, remember that scene where they're talking about how to replace Jason Giambi, and Billy Beane is talking about OBP and all these new age metrics, and all the guys who have been there for decades and decades are just not having it?
Exactly.
How close to reality is that?
That's pretty close to, because I know when Theo was running us, and in Theo I trust me, got to get on base. On base percentage is the key thing. You get on base, we got a chance to score you. So on base percentage is really, really important. And that team, the A's, that won, what was it, 20 games in a row? Who are those guys? Well, they're getting on base, and then they're getting in. So, yeah, there's something to that.
Was there a lot of resistance though within scouting circles when those things first started to rise in prominence?
Well, let me put it this way: scouts in baseball, especially the old timers, are old timers. You know, and it's hard to change.
Were you resistant to it at all?
No. I mean, I could see the importance of it, and I'm just there. I'm there to watch the player play. I'm grading his skills. Now, if I was in the dugout, that might be different. You know, is Friedman calling up Roberts and saying, oh, by the way, we're going to use Scherzer in the 9th inning? You know, I mean, I don't know, is that happening?
If you ask some fans, they would say that it is.
So that being the case, yeah, you might be a little resistance to that if you're in the dugout and being told who to, you know, because the boys upstairs are saying, don't let him go a third time through the lineup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be tough to take as a baseball guy who's been in the dugout for a long time. But from a scouting standpoint, just scout your guys. Just scout them and take care of it that way.
So we've covered a lot during the show, from high school to college to professional baseball. So I want to close with this.
When's part 2?
After the induction, come back. Okay. Tell me how it was.
Part 2. Go ahead.
But I want to close by asking you, regardless of what level a player is at and regardless of what the next step is, what would be your biggest advice to any young athlete who wants to succeed and be seen and have success at whatever that next level is?
Well, obviously, work hard, enjoy the game. You know, be a student of the game. Just don't go out there and take ground balls. I used to give the Pierce players, I used to match up, okay, here are the managers of the 30 teams. Here are the teams. Can you match them up on paper? I wanted them to be a student of the game. So I think that's important. And obviously hard work. And hopefully you have the skills. You were born with the skills and you improve the skills. And you're just a kind of a baseball rat, a gym rat, something like that. You can't get enough of it. So there's a place for you. You'll be seen. You really will be.
All right. Well, Bob Lofrano, coach, athletic director, scout, World Series champion. That's right. Put that ring on. Show it again. There we go.
Jesus, that's big. I got small hands. But
how much does that thing weigh?
It's heavy. It's pretty good size, and it's heavy.
Wow. This is pretty heavy.
And I'll end with one thing. Here's the story. Bob, we've got the rings. We can mail it to you. Okay, that's fine. Just get it to me. I can bring it to you, my department chair. I'm going to Dodger Stadium. Or we'll fly you into Chicago to get it. And I go, well, you can fly me in. So
obviously.
That's what I did. And Theo and Jed Hoyer, the GM at the time, and Theo, we had a little ceremony in Wrigley Field. And I think there were 3 of us, and we got the rings at the same time. I was hoping they'd have me throw out the first pitch that day, but they didn't. But I still got my ring.
Well, when you do that, then we'll for sure have you on part 2.
Part 2, exactly.
All right. Bob Lofrano, thank you so much for joining us on the Cannon Sports Podcast.
Good seeing you again, Phil, back in your home area.
And we thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.